I was sitting at my desk at work scrolling through the health app on my iPhone when I noticed something strange about my wife Sarah's heart rate data. Every Tuesday for the past 8 weeks her heart rate had spiked to 140 beats per minute at almost exactly 2 p.m. Not during her morning workout at the gym. Not during her evening run that she always posted about on Instagram. But every Tuesday afternoon at 2 p.m. when she was supposed to be working from home on conference calls, I stared at the graph on my phone, watching the pattern repeat week after week. A spike that lasted about an hour, sometimes 90 minutes. Her heart rate would climb from her normal resting 65 to 140, sometimes 150, and stay elevated the entire time before dropping back down. The kind of sustained elevated heart rate you'd see during intense cardio or something else that gets your heart pounding. Something that makes you breathless and sweating and completely absorbed in the moment. I zoomed in on last Tuesday's data. The spike started at 2:03 p.m. exactly. Her heart rate had jumped from 68 to 95 in less than 2 minutes. Then it climbed steadily to 140 and plateaued there for an hour and 17 minutes. At 3:20 p.m. it started dropping. By 3:45 p.m. she was back to 70. By 4 p.m. when I'd gotten home from work, she was at her normal resting rate of 65. Sitting on the couch with her laptop answering emails like she'd been there all day, I told myself there was a reasonable explanation. Maybe she'd started doing afternoon workouts and forgot to mention it. Maybe she was taking a HIIT class on Tuesdays. Maybe the data was glitching. But I couldn't shake the feeling in my gut that something was wrong, that there was a pattern here I wasn't supposed to see. That we'd been married for 6 years and together for 9. Sarah was a marketing director who worked from home 3 days a week, Mondays, Tuesdays, and Fridays. I was a software engineer at a tech startup downtown with a 45-minute commute each way. We had a good life, a nice house in the suburbs with a 2-car garage, 2 cars, a golden retriever named Murphy. We talked about starting a family soon, maybe next year after Sarah's big promotion that she'd been working toward. Everything was normal, everything was fine. Or at least that's what I thought until I looked at her fucking heart rate data. The thing is, I only had access to her health data because we'd shared it with each other last year during a fitness challenge at her company. She'd wanted us to compete against each other for steps and active minutes, make it fun, keep each other motivated. We'd synced our Apple Watches to the same health app and spent 3 months trying to outwalk each other. She'd won by 40,000 steps. I'd honestly forgotten we'd even shared it until I was looking at my own stats one day and saw her data was still syncing to my phone. I clicked on the location history feature. The Apple Watch tracked everywhere she went with GPS coordinates and timestamps. I scrolled back to last Tuesday and zoomed in on the map between 2 and 3:30 p.m. Her location showed the Comfort Inn on Route 9, about 15 minutes from our house. Not our house where she was supposed to be working. Not the gym where she had a membership. Not the Starbucks on Main Street where she sometimes worked when she needed a change of scenery. A motel. A cheap roadside motel with hourly rates posted on a sun-faded sign. My hands started shaking and I had to put my phone down on my desk. I could hear my coworkers talking in the cubicles around me, normal office sounds, someone laughing at a joke, someone complaining about a bug in the code. I stood up and walked to the bathroom like I was moving through water. I splashed cold water on my face and looked at myself in the mirror. I tried to think of any explanation that wasn't the obvious one. Maybe she was meeting a client there. Maybe she was helping a friend who needed a place to stay. Maybe the location data was wrong, GPS can be inaccurate. Maybe she was actually at the Panera next door, but the heart rate didn't lie. You don't maintain 140 beats per minute for an hour and a half during a business meeting. You don't spike from 68 to 140 in 2 minutes because you are sitting in a conference room looking at PowerPoint slides. I went back to my desk and opened her location history for the previous Tuesday. Same motel, same time, same duration. The pin on the map showed her arriving at 1:58 p.m. and leaving at 3:41 p.m. I checked the Tuesday before that. Same thing, 2:02 p.m. arrival, 3:38 p.m. departure. I went back 10 weeks and found the same pattern 7 times. Every Tuesday that she'd worked from home. Every single Tuesday for the past 2 months. She'd been at that motel from 2 to 3:30 p.m. With her heart rate elevated like she was running a marathon or fucking someone who wasn't her husband, I scrolled through her other data looking for more patterns. Her step count was always low on Tuesdays, less than 3,000 steps all day. She wasn't going to the gym. She wasn't going anywhere except that motel and back home. Her active minutes on Tuesdays were always clustered around that same time window, 2 to 3:30 p.m. 90 minutes of elevated heart rate that the app categorized as a cardio exercise. I checked her movement data for other days. Mondays she went to the gym at 9 a.m., heart rate spike from her actual workout. Wednesdays she was in the office downtown, no unusual patterns. Thursdays she went for runs in the evening with her running group, heart rate spikes that matched her Strava posts. Fridays she worked from home but her heart rate stayed normal all day. Only Tuesdays showed the pattern. Only Tuesdays had that specific spike at that specific time at that specific location. I should have confronted her right then. I should have driven home and asked her what the fuck was going on. But I didn't. I needed more information. I needed to be sure. I needed to know exactly what I was dealing with before I blew up my entire life based on heart rate data and GPS coordinates. Because what if I was wrong? What if there was some explanation I wasn't seeing? What if I accused her of cheating and destroyed our marriage over a glitch in the health app? That night at dinner, Sarah seemed completely normal. She told me about a campaign she was working on for a new client, some tech startup that needed rebranding. She asked about my day and I lied and said it was fine, just the usual meetings and code reviews. We watched an episode of the show we'd been binging on Netflix, some British murder mystery we were both obsessed with. Murphy laid between us on the couch with his head on Sarah's lap. She fell asleep with her head on my shoulder like she had 1,000 times before, her breathing slow and steady. I kept thinking about those heart rate spikes and feeling sick. I couldn't sleep that night. I laid there next to her in the dark listening to her breathe and watching the ceiling fan spin. I kept pulling up the health app on my phone under the covers, scrolling through the data again and again, hoping I'd see something different. But the pattern was there, undeniable and damning. 8 Tuesdays. 8 identical heart rate spikes. 8 visits to the Comfort Inn en route 9 at 3 a.m. I got up and went downstairs and sat in the living room with Murphy. I opened her location history and zoomed in on the motel. The GPS coordinates were precise, accurate to within a few meters. I opened Google Maps and looked at the street view of the Comfort Inn. A 2-story building with exterior doors, the kind of place where you park right in front of your room. The kind of place people go when they don't want to be seen in a lobby. The kind of place that charges by the hour. I checked our credit card statements going back 3 months. No charges from the Comfort Inn. She was paying cash or he was paying. Probably he was paying. I didn't know who he was yet, but I knew he existed. You don't go to a motel alone 8 Tuesdays in a row. You don't have your heart rate spike to 140 by yourself in an empty room. The next day was Tuesday. I told my boss I had a dentist appointment and left work at 1:30 p.m. I stopped at a Dunkin' Donuts and bought a coffee I didn't want and drove to the Comfort Inn en route 9. I parked in the far corner of the lot behind a landscaping truck where I had a clear view of the entrance. I felt like a detective in a bad movie, sitting in my car with lukewarm coffee watching the door of a cheap motel, but I needed to see. I needed to know who. I needed to put a face to the person who was destroying my marriage. The parking lot was mostly empty. A few cars scattered around, probably people who lived there by the week because they had nowhere else to go. The motel looked worse in person than it did on Google Maps. Peeling paint, cracked parking lot, a sign advertising free HBO and Wi-Fi. Not the kind of place Sarah would normally go. She liked nice things, boutique hotels, places with good reviews on TripAdvisor. But I guess when you're having an affair you don't go to nice places. You go to places where nobody asks questions. The at 1:47 p.m. a silver Audi pulled into the lot. I recognized it immediately. It belonged to Jake Martinez, Sarah's boss at the marketing firm where she'd worked for 4 years. He'd been over to our house for dinner parties at least a dozen times. I'd watched football with him during last year's Super Bowl. We'd played golf together. His wife Amanda did hot yoga with Sarah every Thursday. They had 2 kids, a boy and a girl. I'd seen their photos on Facebook 1,000 times. He parked near the office and went inside. I watched him through the glass door talking to the clerk, probably getting a room key. He came out 2 minutes later and drove his Audi to a room on the far end of the first floor, room 118. He went inside and closed the door. Damn, my heart was pounding now. My hands were shaking. I knew what was about to happen, but I couldn't make myself leave. I needed to see it. I needed to see her walk in there so I would know for certain, so there would be no doubt, no rationalization, no way for me to pretend I didn't know. At 2:03 p.m. Sarah's Honda CR-V pulled into the lot. She parked 3 spots away from Jake's Audi, like they'd planned it that way, close but not too close. She sat in the car for a minute, checking her phone. Then she flipped down the visor and checked her makeup in the mirror. She reapplied lipstick. She fluffed her hair. She texted someone, probably him, probably saying she was here. Then she got out of the car wearing a dress I'd never seen before. Something black and fitted that showed off her figure. Something definitely not appropriate for working from home on conference calls. She definitely hadn't been wearing it when I left for work that morning. She must have changed. She must have packed it in her car or bought it specifically for these Tuesday afternoons. The thought made me want to scream. She walked across the parking lot to room 118 like she'd done it 100 times. She didn't look around nervously. She didn't act suspicious. She just walked up to the door and knocked once and Jake opened it immediately and she disappeared inside and the door closed behind her. I watched that door close and I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I sat there in my car for 5 minutes or 10 or 30, I don't know, just staring at room 118 and trying to process what I'd just seen. My wife of 6 years, the woman I'd promised to love forever. The woman I'd bought a house with and adopted a dog with and made plans for children with. Walking into a motel room to fuck her boss on a Tuesday afternoon while I was supposed to be at work. I pulled up the health app on my phone with shaking hands and watched her heart rate in real time. At 2:08 p.m. it started climbing. 75, 85, 95, 110, 125, 140. It stayed there, elevated and pounding. I was watching my wife's heart rate spike in real time while she was in that room with him. While they were kissing and undressing and doing things she used to do with me. Every beat of her heart was right there on my screen, translated into a graph, quantified and time-stamped. Modern technology letting me witness my marriage ending in beats per minute. I sat there for an hour and 20 minutes watching that heart rate stay elevated. I watched it dip occasionally to 120, then climb back to 145. I imagined what was happening in that room to cause each spike and dip. I felt sick, but I couldn't look away. This was my marriage dying in real time with metrics and data points. At 3:31 p.m. Jake came out first. He looked around the parking lot quickly, then got in his Audi and drove away. At 3:39 p.m. Sarah came out. Her hair looked different, messier. She was carrying her purse and her phone. She got in her CR-V and sat there for a moment checking her reflection in the mirror again. Fixing her hair, wiping under her eyes. Then she checked her phone and started the car and drove away. Her heart rate on my app was dropping. 110, 95, 80, 70. By the time she pulled into our driveway, it would be 65 again. Resting. Calm. Normal. Like nothing had happened. Like she'd spent the afternoon on conference calls and answering emails instead of fucking her boss in a motel room. I drove home in a daze. I got there at 4:15 p.m., my usual time. Sarah was in the kitchen making dinner. She'd changed into yoga pants and an oversized t-shirt, her hair in a ponytail. She looked comfortable and casual and domestic. She smiled when I came in and asked how my dentist appointment went. I said it was fine, no cavities. She said she'd had a busy day with back-to-back conference calls. I nodded and said that sounds exhausting and went upstairs to our bedroom and threw up in the bathroom. That night I acted normal. I ate the chicken stir-fry she made. I helped her load the dishwasher. We took Murphy for a walk around the neighborhood. We watched TV. We went to bed. She kissed me goodnight and rolled over and fell asleep. I laid there in the dark staring at the ceiling wondering how many times she'd done this, how many lies she'd told, how many Tuesday afternoons she'd come home and kissed me with the same mouth that had been on him hours earlier. The next day I went to work and acted normal. The day after that, normal. I came home and had dinner and pretended everything was fine while I figured out what to do. I checked her Apple Watch data every day. Every Tuesday the same pattern appeared like clockwork. 2 p.m., heart rate spike, comfort in, 90 minutes, back to normal. I started paying attention to other things I'd missed before. How she always showered when she got home on Tuesdays, said the workout made her sweaty. How she was always in a good mood on Tuesday evenings, relaxed and affectionate. How she'd started buying nicer underwear, things I thought were for me but now realized were for him. How Jake's name came up in conversation more often, how she'd mentioned something funny he said or a project they were collaborating on. I looked back at our text messages from the past few months. Nothing suspicious on the surface, but I noticed she never texted me between 2 and 4 p.m. on Tuesdays. Complete radio silence during those hours. Other days, she'd send me random messages throughout the day, memes or questions or just saying she missed me. But Tuesdays were silent because she was busy. Because she was with him. I thought about confronting her privately, but I couldn't trust myself not to completely lose it. I thought about filing for divorce without saying anything, but I wanted her to know that I knew. I wanted her to feel exposed the way she'd exposed me. I wanted everyone to know what she'd done, what they'd both done. I wanted their perfect professional relationship to implode publicly. I wanted consequences, so I decided to do it at Jake's house. At the dinner party he and Amanda were hosting that Saturday for their company team. Sarah had mentioned it 3 weeks ago. She'd been excited about it, said it would be good for networking. She'd bought a new dress specifically for it, a burgundy one that cost $200. She'd gotten her hair done that afternoon at the salon. She looked beautiful when we left the house. And I felt nothing but rage. The dinner party was at Jake and Amanda's house in Riverside Heights. One of those expensive neighborhoods with gated driveways and professionally landscaped yards. Their house was gorgeous, probably worth over $1 million. Wine cellar in the basement, chef's kitchen with marble countertops, backyard with a pool and outdoor kitchen. The kind of house Sarah always said she wanted someday. There were 12 people there, all from Sarah's marketing firm. Account managers and creative directors and social media specialists, all dressed up and drinking expensive wine and eating catered appetizers. Everyone was laughing and talking about campaigns and clients and office gossip. Sarah was in her element, working the room, being charming and funny. Jake was playing the gracious host, showing people his wine collection, grilling steaks on his fancy outdoor grill. Amanda was showing everyone the herb garden she just planted, telling them about her composting system. I drank sparkling water and watched them all. I watched Jake and Sarah carefully avoid each other, not standing too close, not talking directly unless other people were around. They'd practiced this, perfected this performance. They looked like boss and employee, nothing more. If I hadn't seen what I'd seen, if I didn't have the data, I would never have suspected that we ate dinner at a long table on their back patio under string lights. Grilled steaks and roasted vegetables and Caesar salad and fresh bread from the bakery downtown. Everyone was talking and laughing, getting drunk on expensive Cabernet. Sarah was sitting next to me holding my hand under the table. Jake was at the head of the table next to Amanda telling a story about a disastrous client presentation. Everyone was having a wonderful time. I waited until we'd finished eating and moved inside to the living room for dessert. Amanda brought out a homemade tiramisu and everyone was eating it and drinking espresso and port wine. People were sitting on the leather couches and the accent chairs Jake was so proud of. The ones he told me cost $4,000 each. Everyone was full and drunk and relaxed. Then I stood up. I was holding my water glass like I was going to make a toast. Everyone looked at me. Sarah smiled at me like she had no idea what was coming. Jake raised his wine glass, expecting something nice. I said I wanted to thank Jake for being such an exceptional boss to Sarah. I said I really appreciated how much extra time he'd been spending with her lately, how dedicated he was to her professional development. I said their working relationship had clearly become very close over the past few months, particularly on Tuesday afternoons. The room started to get quiet. A few people laughed nervously thinking it was a joke. Sarah's smile faltered. Jake's face went pale. I said I'd noticed something interesting about Sarah's Apple Watch data recently. I said that every Tuesday afternoon at 2 p.m. her heart rate spiked to 140 beats per minute and stayed elevated for about 90 minutes. I said I'd been curious about what kind of activity could cause such a sustained elevated heart rate, so I'd checked her location history. And I discovered that these intensive cardio sessions were taking place at the Comfort Inn on Route 9. Room 118 specifically, the room went completely silent. You could hear the air conditioning running. Someone's fork clattered against their plate. Sarah's face went white. Jake stood up and started to say something, but I kept talking. I pulled out my phone and turned it toward everyone. I showed them the health app with 8 weeks of data. The Tuesday spikes, all perfectly aligned. All at the same time. All at the same location. I scrolled through the location history, showing the Comfort Inn address over and over. I showed them last Tuesday's data, the spike that had started at 2:03 p.m. and lasted until 3:31 p.m. Amanda started crying. Not dramatic crying, just quiet tears running down her face while she stared at her husband. One of Sarah's coworkers gasped. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Jake was standing there frozen with his wine glass in his hand, not saying anything, just looking at his wife crying and his career imploding in real time. Sarah tried to explain. She said it wasn't what it looked like, which was the stupidest thing she could have said because everyone in that room could see exactly what it looked like. The data didn't lie. The timestamps didn't lie. The location history didn't lie. She said I was misunderstanding the information, that there was a reasonable explanation. But she couldn't think of one fast enough and her voice trailed off. Jake tried to say something about the data being inaccurate. About GPS not being reliable, about this being a huge misunderstanding. But Amanda was looking at him with this expression of complete betrayal, and she said, "Is it true?" Her voice was quiet and broken. She said to Jake, "Is it true? Have you been sleeping with her?" He didn't answer. That was the answer. I told Sarah I wanted a divorce. I told her I'd seen her walk into that motel room. I told her I'd been watching it happen for weeks while she came home and pretended everything was normal. I told her I'd loved her more than anything in the world and she'd thrown it away for Tuesday afternoon motel sex with her married boss. I told Amanda that she deserved better than a husband who would do this. I told Jake that he was a coward and a cliché and that I hoped his career was worth it because it was over now. Then I walked out of that house and left Sarah standing there with everyone staring at her. And I've never felt more satisfied and more destroyed at the same time. I heard the aftermath later from people who were there. Sarah tried to leave, but Amanda confronted her in the driveway, crying and screaming at her. Jake tried to control the situation, but everyone was leaving. People were texting other people from the company. The story was spreading in real time. Within an hour, everyone at the marketing firm knew. By Monday morning, it was all anyone was talking about. That was 4 months ago. The divorce is almost final. Sarah moved out the next day and is living with her sister in Pennsylvania. She left most of her stuff, said she'd come back for it later, but she never did. I packed it all in boxes and put them in the garage. I haven't had the energy to deal with it yet. Jake got fired from the marketing firm 2 weeks after the dinner party. The company said it was for violating their ethics policy about relationships between supervisors and subordinates. Amanda filed for divorce immediately. Sarah got fired too. Technically she resigned, but they would have fired her anyway. From what I heard, they're not together now. The affair died as soon as it was exposed. They haven't spoken since that night. The thing that destroyed both their marriages and careers lasted exactly as long as it took for everyone to find out about it. Sarah has tried to apologize 100 times. Long emails about how it started at a work conference 6 months ago and just happened and she couldn't stop. How she still loves me and it didn't mean anything and she wants to work it out. How she made a terrible mistake and she'll do anything to fix it. I blocked her email after reading the first 10. I blocked her number after listening to the first 15 voicemails. I have nothing to say to her. My lawyer said I had an airtight case for divorce based on adultery. The Apple Watch data was admissible as evidence. The location history, the heart rate data, the timestamps. All of it proved a pattern of deception. Sarah's lawyer tried to argue it was circumstantial, but you can't argue with GPS coordinates and biometric data. The technology didn't lie even when she did. The weird thing is I still have access to her Apple Watch data. She never revoked my sharing permissions. Maybe she forgot. Maybe she doesn't know how. Maybe she doesn't care anymore. I don't look at it anymore, but sometimes late at night I think about opening the app. I wonder if her heart rate still spikes on Tuesday afternoons. I wonder if she found someone else or if she learned anything at all from getting caught. I deleted the health app from my phone last week. I couldn't take knowing it was there, knowing I could see her data if I wanted to. Knowing that somewhere in Pennsylvania her Apple Watch was tracking her steps and her heart rate and her location, and I could access all of it with one tap. I don't need to know anymore. I don't want to know, but I'll never forget those graphs. Those perfect spikes every Tuesday at 2 p.m. That pattern that revealed everything. 8 weeks of data that destroyed my marriage. 140 beats per minute that meant my wife was with someone else while I sat at my desk thinking she was working from home. I bought a Garmin last month. No sharing features. No data syncing with other people. No way for anyone to see where I am or what my heart is doing. I run every morning now and I don't track it on any app. I don't share it. I don't want anyone to have access to any part of my life that they could use against me or that could accidentally reveal something I didn't want them to know. Murphy still sleeps in my bed at night. I got to keep him in the divorce. Sarah said she couldn't take care of a dog right now with everything going on. I think she just didn't want the reminder of the life she destroyed. Sometimes he looks at me like he knows something's wrong, like he's wondering why she doesn't come home anymore. I tell him it's just us now, buddy, and he seems okay. With that, I still drive past the Comfort, and sometimes on my way home from work, I take Route 9 even though it's not the fastest way because I need to see it. I need to remember that it's real, that it actually happened, that my wife actually pulled into that parking lot 8 times and walked into room 118 while I was at work thinking everything was fine. The motel looks sad and depressing every time I pass it. I can't imagine what she saw in meeting him there. But I guess when you're having an affair the location doesn't matter. Just the secret. I wonder if Jake and Sarah ever think about the Apple Watch. If they ever talked about it during those Tuesday afternoons in that motel room. If Sarah ever looked at her wrist and thought about the data it was collecting. The steps from her car to the room. The elevated heart rate that would appear on the health app one could access. The GPS coordinates that would show exactly where she was. Or if they just didn't care because they thought they were too smart to get caught. The truth is Sarah probably would have gotten away with it if she hadn't wanted me to see her step count. That stupid fitness challenge last year that made us share our health data. That's what destroyed my marriage. 10,000 steps a day and a heart rate monitor that couldn't tell the difference between a workout and an affair. I learned that technology is neutral. It doesn't judge. It just records and reports. 140 beats per minute is just a number until you know what it means. GPS coordinates are just longitude and latitude until you look up the address. Data is just data until it reveals the truth about someone you love. I learned that privacy isn't just about keeping secrets from people who want to hurt you. Sometimes it's about protecting yourself from the truth about people you trust. And I learned that the most intimate betrayal can be revealed by the most mundane technology. A watch that counts your steps and tracks your heart rate and records your location and doesn't understand that some data should stay hidden. To this day I still check my own heart rate sometimes and wonder what it's telling me, what secrets my own body is keeping, what patterns are there if you know how to look. And I think about Sarah somewhere in Pennsylvania with her Apple Watch still on her wrist, still tracking everything, still recording data that nobody's watching anymore. Because that's the thing about surveillance. It only matters if someone's paying attention. And I'm not paying attention anymore. I'm done watching. I'm done tracking. I'm done trying to find the truth in data points and graphs and location history. I found the truth and it destroyed everything. So now I'm just trying to figure out how to live with it.